This weekend marked the 50th anniversary of an alleged landing of aliens known as the Little Green Men in Kelly, Kentucky. The event was commemorated by a get-together in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, dubbed the Little Green Men Festival. The name doesn't exactly beg you to take UFOs and aliens seriously, but Peter Davenport does, and so do a lot of other people. Mr. Davenport's the director of the National UFO Reporting Center. He's a Stanford graduate. He spoke at the Little Green Men Festival, and he joins me now. Mr. Davenport, thanks a lot for coming on.
You're welcome. Thanks, Tucker.
I take what you say seriously. Here's the question that's always nagged at me. If there are UFOs, government obviously would have federal government would have a real interest in finding out for national security reasons, among others. They know, presumably, if these exist. Why would they hide that information from the public?
I don't know. I wish I had an adequate answer for that question. I'm afraid you're going to have to pose that to the government to get an adequate answer. I just don't know, and it's one of the many things that really mystifies us UFO investigators, and which we think is significant. We suspect they have a great deal more information than they're letting on, and they clearly are not sharing it with the American people.
Well, the government is made up of ordinary Americans, by and large, including military pilots who would be in a position to see UFOs if, in fact, they visited this planet regularly. Yeah. Why aren't there many former retired, say, military pilots talking about the UFOs they've seen in public?
There are indeed. We've received many reports from them, and other UFO organizations have as well over recent years, and they're coming forward in ever greater numbers to report their experience with this phenomenon.
Why do you think those reports don't make it into the mainstream press very often?
That's another interesting question. I don't know. There have been some dramatic and very interesting UFO events that have occurred in my tenure, the last 11 years as director of the National UFO Reporting Center, and we can't give this information away in many respects. That is very surprising to me.
I know there was a sort of widely covered event in Arizona in 1997, UFOs, objects in the sky anyway, seen by thousands of people, including air traffic controllers. What do you think that was?
Well, I don't have the luxury of being able to say what it is, but I can say what it was not. And the objects, and they were in airspace above Arizona for probably an hour and a quarter, maybe an hour and a half, were not meteors. They were not terrestrial aircraft that anyone has been able to recognize since the event. And that's the thing that we're usually left with in the field of ufology, is about all we can do is eliminate logical possibilities, and we're always left with this question mark. Until we have a long-handled butterfly net that will allow us to reach up and snag one of these objects, all we can do is label them as an other, I'm afraid.
Ufology, I've never heard that. Thanks for introducing that term. How do I, as an ordinary person, know if I'm looking at a UFO or, say, a weather balloon? What are the marker signs for UFO?
Well, there really aren't that many weather balloons. That's an old saw that people frequently allude to. But your question implies there could be mistaken identity, and in fact, that is very often the case. I would say probably upwards of 90% of the time that people call our center in Seattle to report what they thought or think might be a UFO, it is in fact not a UFO at all, not a genuine UFO. It's a satellite or a celestial body of some kind, perhaps a light or an object they simply can't identify. But that doesn't necessarily make it a ship from another part of our galaxy, obviously. So that's the job of an experienced UFO investigator, is trying to separate out those cases from the genuine cases.
So for our viewers watching at home who are interested in learning more about this, being convinced, tell me quickly one example people can look up on Google in the last 10 years of a UFO sighting in this country that's pretty compelling, that might convince them that these are real.
Yeah. I would say it's the one you've alluded to already, Tucker, and that is the so-called Phoenix Lights case that occurred over Arizona on the 13th of March, 1997. In my opinion, probably the most dramatic UFO event that has occurred since the alleged case at Roswell, New Mexico back in July of 1947. I remember the night very well. I was working on the hotline, and it was very dramatic. Many calls a minute about that.
I have to say, I'm not exactly out there every weekend searching for Nessie or Bigfoot, but that was a pretty compelling story. People should look it up. Peter Davenport, thanks a lot for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Tucker.